Okay, back at it again, this time with the discussion about free will. Um, I've never really believed in free will. I've believed in something called, it's a psychological term, locus of control. This idea that it's good to have the feeling that you have control over your life, even if you really uh, don't. And one of the most interesting things about free will uh, is the idea that it somehow transcends, the normal way of the world operating, right? That somehow it's above and beyond cause and effect. It circumvents the normal ways of how the world operates. You can somehow change the way the world, the way that you act by somehow feeling or forcing yourself to act in another way. And you could do this through the will or desire to do it. The will is more than desire, really. But, then the question is, where did that will come from? Where's the will? If there's this thing as a choice in every action, then when you make a decision, let's say you make a decisive decision. Let's say you make a decision and it was easy, right? It was a simple decision you had to make. Nothing difficult about it. Why wasn't it difficult? Why was it so easy? Why did this willpower, why did it feel like there wasn't any willpower there? Or why was the will so aligned with what life has life presented you, right? So it seems like this kind of idea of to have the force, that this idea of the force of will, that pushing through the pushing through something that is making you feel like you can't do it, right? Like, so, why can't, some people starve themselves for 40 days, or some people fast for a day while others can starve themselves for 40 days. Like, where does this discrepancy come in? Why are some people able to do something, others not? Even when you could see, or you could hear, you could feel the strong desire to do it. Why isn't it possible? Why can't why can't that happen? And that's kind of that's kind of the one thing I think about constantly is, if I'm on this topic, is, if there's such a thing as free will, then why is it so hard to transition from A to B for some people and easy for others, even when the desires, even when the desire to do so is the same, right? I think it's contrast. You can contrast it with it is contrasted with determinism. Every outcome that happens in your life is determined by some series of previous outcomes, a long string of which go back since to the beginning of time. The issue is our language doesn't really allow us to think about our own our own selves in this kind of world, right? So we say, oh well, if determinism is true, if every outcome in the past is going to determine what's going to happen next, then we have no control over what we're going to do next. But that sentence doesn't make any sense, because saying you have no control is like saying, you know, when you look at a machinery, when you look at a device, when you look at something and you look at a part of that device, it says, well, this part of the machine has no control over any other part of the machine or the machine as a whole, how it functions, because it's just a cog in the system. Well, yes, it does. It definitely has an effect on the device. The the cog is causing the device to function properly. If you took that cog out, the device would stop functioning if it was essential. If it was not essential, then it would just function less effectively. But still, I mean, the device is still useful, right? Even if it's not, even if it's not in complete control over every single action, uh, even if it doesn't have complete uh, control over the outcome of the machine's processes, right? It still is going to have an effect if you do something to the device, or if you do something to the part. So I think the problem is people are thinking that there's some kind of independence in action that this cog in the machine has. That we're not just cogs in the universe. We're not just cogs on this earth or in our own lives. We have some level of independence, independent of everything else around us. Or there's some kind of mysterious force that you're tapping into that allows you to become capable of affecting things in ways that previous events didn't allow you to affect, which doesn't make any sense. Free will does not allow you, it does not afford you that kind. Well, free will doesn't make any sense from that type of perspective. There are other definitions which try to loosen up the free will understanding of free will. Free will could just be the idea or the concept of actually just having a choice, right? There's the idea that anything you do, there's going to be a choice. And by saying that there's going to be a choice, it implies that there's some sort of uncertainty. All right, free will, it seems to me what's going on when people are talking about free will is what they're actually talking about is the uncertainty of action. The uncertainty of what is going to happen when something needs to happen, when a choice needs to be made, when a series of options are presented to you, as they are in every second of every day. I mean, think about it. Every word you say, every movement your body makes, every thought you have, somehow is a choice in a sense. You could have not had that thought, right? You could just you could just erase the thought from your head. You could try right now. Try taking whatever thought is coming into your mind and just thinking about something else, right? Right, so every second of every day, there's always choices being presented to you, whether or not you're aware of them or not. And these choices, or these options that are presented to you, the uncertainty is which option will you take. That is what people kind of feel free will to be. They feel that to be free will because if you realize, if you had the ability to perfectly predict what was going to happen in the next hour or the next day or the entirety of time, if you had perfect clairvoyance, then there would be no free will. You wouldn't think about there being free will because you wouldn't change anything. Although clairvoyance wouldn't make any sense, because if you could predict perfectly what's going to happen in the future, then you could also predict your reaction to that prediction, and then you would predict how you would react to that reaction, and then you'd predict how you'd react to that reaction of that reaction, and we would just go down into an infinite regress. Because if you could know what was going to happen tomorrow at 10 p.m., and you didn't like what was going to happen at 10 p.m. tomorrow, you could change your action, but then that would immediately change the outcome. But then as soon as the outcome changed, if you were okay with the outcome staying, if the changed outcome, then you would do nothing. You would be satisfied. You would act without thought for that outcome. But if you didn't like the outcome and you did change your actions and the outcome changed again, and then you changed your actions again and you didn't like it, and it changed again and you didn't like it. Well, each time you did that, that would take up time. And slowly, as you crawled up to that 10 p.m. mark, you're continuously trying to change the outcome that's going to happen at 10 p.m. Each time you don't like what you're seeing, and each time you do take action, it just defaults back to some other undesirable outcome. Right? And then 10 p.m. would hit, and whatever was going to happen would happen. Or you had some level of clairvoyance where you could predict what was going to happen and take into consideration your own reaction, your own self into that world. You could predict how you were going to act, knowing that what the outcome would be. How every single action that you took into the future would be affected by that outcome. Right? And no matter what you did, the outcome would remain the same. A kind of perfect prediction machine. In that case, would there be any choice? Would there be any free will? Would you have any kind of feeling for what the world was going to be like if you took action, or if you did this, or if you did that? Could you have any regrets? Could you feel as if I had done something else, things would have been different? That's impossible to have that feeling when you know what's going to happen at any point in time. Right? So it's that simple idea that, can free will exist? If you had perfect clairvoyance, and as soon as you had this, you had the sense of free will to you just disappeared, then the thing that you're referring to as free will is the uncertainty of outcome.